What happens when an 82-year-old decorated war veteran stands before a judge, trembling not from fear, but from a secret so profound it would bring the entire courtroom to tears? Judge Frank Caprio thought he'd seen everything in his 37 years on the bench, but nothing could have prepared him for what Robert Mitchell was about to reveal. If you believe our veterans deserve more respect than they're getting, hit that like button right now. And make sure you're subscribed, because what you're about to witness will restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment telling us about a veteran in your life who's made a difference, because their stories need to be heard. It was a cold Tuesday morning in Providence, Rhode Island, November 14, 2023. The municipal courthouse at 25 Doran Street was packed, as it usually was when Judge Caprio presided. People came from all over just to witness his unique brand of justice, the kind that looked beyond the law and into the human heart. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow on the worn wooden benches filled with defendants waiting their turn. The smell of old paper and floor polish mixed with the nervous energy of people hoping for mercy. Robert Mitchell sat in the third row, his weathered hands gripping a manila folder so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He wore a navy blue cardigan from Land's End, slightly frayed at the cuffs, over a pressed white shirt. His gray slacks were clean, but showed signs of many washes, and his black shoes from Payless gleamed with fresh polish. On his lapel, barely noticeable unless you looked closely, was a small bronze star pin. His silver hair was neatly combed, and despite being 82 years old, he sat with the rigid posture of a military man. But if you looked into his pale blue eyes, you'd see something that didn't match that disciplined exterior. You'd see fear. Next to him sat his granddaughter, Emma Rodriguez, 28 years old, wearing her nursing scrubs from Rhode Island Hospital because she'd come straight from her night shift. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes were red-rimmed. Whether from exhaustion or worry, no one could tell. She held her grandfather's free hand, squeezing it gently every few minutes, as if to remind him she was there. On Robert's other side sat Father Michael O'Connor from St. Augustine's Catholic Church, a round-faced man of 60 with wire-rimmed glasses and a black clerical shirt. He'd known Robert for 43 years and had never seen him like this. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances, because what happened next proves they exist. The bailiff, Officer Marcus Thompson, a broad-shouldered African-American man who'd worked this courtroom for 15 years, called out in his deep baritone voice, "Case number 2023, CV 47823, City of Providence versus Robert James Mitchell. Parking violations. Failure to pay multiple citations." His voice echoed off the high ceiling, bouncing around the ornate molding that dated back to 1929 when the courthouse was built. Robert stood slowly, his legs unsteady. Emma rose with him, her hand on his elbow to steady him. Father O'Connor stood too, a show of support that Judge Caprio noticed immediately. The three of them made their way to the front of the courtroom, their footsteps seeming impossibly loud on the marble floor. Every eye in the room followed them. There was something about Robert's bearing, the way he moved with dignity despite his obvious distress, that commanded attention. Judge Frank Caprio looked up from his paperwork, and his expression softened immediately. At 77 years old, Caprio himself understood something about aging, about dignity, about the weight of years. His kind eyes, magnified slightly behind his reading glasses, took in every detail of the man before him. The judge's signature bow tie, this one navy with small American flags, sat perfectly straight beneath his black robe. His thick white hair was combed back from his forehead, and his face, lined with decades of seeing humanity at its best and worst, showed immediate concern. "Good morning, sir," Judge Caprio said, his voice gentle, the Rhode Island accent unmistakable. "Please state your name for the record." "Robert James Mitchell, Your Honor." His voice was steady, the voice of a man who'd given commands, who'd faced enemy fire, who'd stood his ground in rice paddies half a world away. But his hands trembled as he set the manila folder on the podium before him. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because this channel brings you real stories of real justice. Judge Caprio glanced at his computer screen, then back at Robert. "Mr. Mitchell, I see here you have 17 unpaid parking tickets dating back over 8 months. That's quite a few. The total amount owed is $1,840. Can you tell me what happened? This isn't like you. I see you have no prior record, not even a speeding ticket in, well, I'm looking back 20 years and there's nothing. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter, Jennifer Walsh, who'd been typing steadily all morning, her fingers flying across her stenotype machine, paused to look up. There was something happening here, something beyond a simple parking case. Everyone could feel it. Robert opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His face crumpled slightly, and he looked down at the folder. Emma moved closer to him, her arm around his shoulders now. Father O'Connor stepped forward slightly, a subtle gesture of support. "Your Honor?" Emma spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. "May I explain?" Quote. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "Please, help me understand what's going on here." "My grandfather," Emma began, and her voice broke. She took a breath, steadying herself. "My grandfather has been parking illegally downtown because he's been visiting his wife, my grandmother, Margaret Mitchell, at Rhode Island Hospital. She's been in the ICU for the past 9 months. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He parks in a loading zone on Eddy Street because it's the closest spot to the entrance, and he can barely walk from farther away. His knees, they're—" She couldn't continue. Like this video, if you believe love is the most powerful force in the world. The courtroom, which had been quiet before, became absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. In the back row, a young woman named Sarah Chen, there for her own speeding ticket, felt tears spring to her eyes. Next to her, an older man named David Kowalski, a retired teacher facing charges for an expired registration, removed his glasses to wipe his eyes. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his elbows on his desk, his hands clasped before him. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm so sorry to hear about your wife. How long have you been married?" Quote, Robert looked up then, and the tears that had been threatening finally spilled over, running down his weathered cheeks. 61 years, Your Honor. 61 years this past September. We got married at St. Augustine's on September 7th, 1962. I'd just come back from my first tour. She waited for me. His voice broke completely. He visits her every single day, Your Honor. Emma continued, her own tears flowing now, every single day for 9 months. He takes the bus from their apartment in Cranston because his eyesight isn't good enough to drive anymore. It takes him an hour and a half each way. He gets there at 8 in the morning and stays until 8 at night. 12 hours every day. And he parks in that loading zone because by the time he gets there after that long bus ride, he's in so much pain from his knees, from his back, that he physically cannot walk from the parking garage 4 blocks away. Judge Caprio removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. His own eyes were glistening. In his decades on the bench, he'd seen thousands of cases, heard every excuse imaginable, witnessed every variety of human struggle. But this was different. Drop a comment right now telling us about a love story that inspired you, because Robert and Margaret's story is just beginning. Your Honor, Father O'Connor spoke now, his Irish accent still present after 40 years in America. I've known Robert and Margaret since 1980. I baptized their 3 children. I buried their son, Patrick, in 2008 when he died in Afghanistan. Robert is the most honorable man I've ever known. He would rather die than break a rule intentionally. But his wife, Your Honor, she's dying. The doctors say weeks, maybe days. And every moment he's not by her side is a moment he'll never get back. The folder on the podium sat unopened, but Judge Caprio had noticed it. Mr. Mitchell, what's in the folder? Quote. Robert's hands shook as he opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. He pulled out the first one with trembling fingers and held it up. It showed a young couple, the man in an army uniform, the woman in a simple white dress with a small bouquet of daisies. They were standing on the steps of a church, laughing, the sun catching the woman's auburn hair. The joy on their faces was incandescent. That's us, Your Honor. September 7th, 1962. She was 19. I was 21. Most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. Still is. Robert's voice was barely a whisper now. He pulled out another photograph. This one showed the same couple, older now, surrounded by children. Our kids, Thomas, Patrick, and Sarah. That's from 1979. Thomas is 50 now, lives in Seattle. Sarah's 48, lives in Boston. Patrick, his voice failed him. Patrick was killed by an IED outside Kabul, Emma said softly. He was 33. A Marine Corps captain. My grandfather hasn't been the same since. Judge Caprio's hand was over his mouth now. Several people in the courtroom were crying openly. Officer Thompson, the bailiff, turned slightly away, his jaw clenched, his own eyes wet. If you believe our veterans and their families deserve better, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Robert continued pulling out photographs. Margaret holding a newborn Emma. Margaret and Robert at a beach, probably in their 60s, holding hands in the surf. Margaret in a hospital bed, her hair gone from chemotherapy, but smiling bravely, Robert beside her holding her hand. And then the most recent ones. Margaret unconscious in the ICU, tubes and wires everywhere, her face gaunt, her skin gray. And in every single one of those ICU photos, there was Robert beside her, holding her hand, his face close to hers. I talk to her every day, Your Honor, Robert said, his voice stronger now, as if the photographs had given him strength. The doctors say she can't hear me, that she's too far gone. But I know different. I know she hears me. Because sometimes, just sometimes, she squeezes my hand. Just a little. Just enough to let me know she's still there, still fighting, still with me. He pulled out a piece of paper, worn and creased from being folded and unfolded many times. This is from last week, from Dr. Chen, her oncologist. He handed it to the judge. Judge Caprio read it silently, and his face changed. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Mr. Mitchell, this says she has, at most, 2 weeks left. Perhaps only days. Yes, Your Honor. Robert's voice was steady now, the soldier coming through. Which is why I need to tell you the truth. I need to tell you my secret. The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. This was it. This was the moment everyone would remember. Share this with anyone who needs to hear this story. I don't have the money to pay these tickets, Your Honor. I don't. And it's not because I'm poor. Not exactly. It's because I've been using every penny I have for something else. Robert reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a small notebook, the kind you can buy at CVS for $1. He opened it, revealing pages of handwritten notes, numbers, dates. Margaret's insurance covers most of her care, but not all. Not the private room so she doesn't have to share with someone else in her final days. Not the special mattress that keeps her from getting bed sores. Not the music therapist who comes twice a week to play her favorite songs, the ones we danced to. Not the chaplain who prays with her every evening. I pay for those things. It comes to about $300 a week. I have my Social Security, $1, $847 a month. My pension from my 30 years at the General Dynamics plant, $623 a month. That's $2,470 a month total. Quote, he showed the judge the notebook where every expense was meticulously recorded. Rent for our apartment, $950. Utilities, $150. Food for me, $200. And I'm eating mostly canned soup and crackers. Bus passes, $70. Margaret's extras at the hospital, $1, $200 a month. That puts me at $2, $570. I'm short $100 every month. And I was already behind before Margaret got sick. I've been selling things. Our car, that went 8 months ago for $3, $200. My coin collection that I started when I was 10 years old, that went for $890. Margaret's jewelry, except her wedding ring, that went for $1, $500. I sold my medals. The last words came out in a whisper, and the impact was immediate. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Father O'Connor closed his eyes, his head bowing. Judge Caprio stood up from his chair, an almost unprecedented move. You sold your medals? The judge's voice was thick with emotion. Yes, Your Honor. My Bronze Star, my Purple Heart, my unit citations, everything except this one. He touched the small pin on his lapel. I kept one bronze star because Margaret gave it back to me at the hospital. She was still conscious then, back in March. She made me promise to keep it, to wear it. So I do, every day. But the rest, I sold them to a collector in Massachusetts for $4, 100. It seemed like a lot of money at the time. Comment below if you think what he did was heroic or heartbreaking, because we want to hear your thoughts. Judge Caprio walked out from behind his bench, something he almost never did. He came around to where Robert stood and put his hand on the old man's shoulder. "Mr. Mitchell, do you know what those medals represented, what you sacrificed for them?" Quote, "I do, Your Honor. I got the Bronze Star in 1969, outside Da Nang. My platoon was pinned down, taking heavy fire. My lieutenant was wounded, bleeding out. I went back for him. Got shot in the leg doing it, that's the Purple Heart. But I got him out, he lived. Got to see his kids grow up. That seemed like it mattered." Robert's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were describing a trip to the grocery store, not an act of extraordinary valor. "And you sold them." Judge Caprio's voice wasn't accusatory. It was filled with awe. "Your Honor, those are just pieces of metal. Margaret is my whole life. She's been my whole life since I was 21 years old. She stood by me through 2 tours in Vietnam. She held me when I had nightmares every night for 5 years after I came home. She worked 2 jobs when I couldn't work because the nightmares were so bad. She raised our children mostly alone because I was emotionally gone for so long. She forgave me for missing Patrick's birth because I was in a VA hospital dealing with what they now call PTSD, but what we just called being broken back then. She loved me when I didn't deserve it, when I couldn't love myself. Those medals, they're nothing compared to what she's worth. Nothing." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Sarah Chen in the back row was sobbing into her hands. David Kowalski had his handkerchief out, wiping his eyes unashamedly. Jennifer Walsh, the court reporter, had stopped typing entirely, tears streaming down her face. Officer Thompson turned his back completely, his shoulders shaking. If this is touching your heart, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because stories like this need to be shared. Judge Caprio's voice was rough when he spoke. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to do something I rarely do. I'm going to dismiss all of these tickets. All 17 of them. You owe nothing. Not 1 penny." A collective gasp went through the courtroom, followed by spontaneous applause. But Robert was shaking his head, his face anguished. "Your Honor, I can't accept that. I broke the law. I parked illegally 17 times. I did it knowing it was wrong. I did it anyway. My father taught me that a man pays his debts. My drill sergeant in basic training taught me that rules matter, even when they're inconvenient. Margaret taught me that doing the right thing isn't always doing the easy thing. I can't just walk away from this debt." Quote, Judge Caprio looked at this man, this 82-year-old veteran who'd given everything to his country and was now giving everything to his wife and who still couldn't accept mercy. "Mr. Mitchell, when can you pay?" Quote, "I don't know, Your Honor. After Margaret passes, I won't have those extra expenses anymore. I could maybe pay $50 a month. It would take me 3 years. I'll be 85 if I make it that long. But I'll pay. I give you my word." "Your word," Judge Caprio smiled sadly. "Mr. Mitchell, I believe your word is worth more than most people's contracts. But I have a different proposal. I'm going to dismiss these tickets on 1 condition." "What's that, Your Honor?" Quote, "That you promise me you'll spend every possible moment with Margaret, that you won't worry about these tickets or this debt ever again. That you'll hold her hand and tell her you love her and make every second count. Can you do that?" Quote, Robert's face crumpled again. "Your Honor, that's too much. You're being too kind. Mr. Mitchell, kindness isn't something we run out of. And if I can't show kindness to a man like you, a man who served his country with honor, who's loved his wife with such devotion, who's sacrificed everything for the people he loves, then what am I doing here? What's the point of this robe, this bench, this whole system?" Quote, "Drop a comment telling us about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness." Emma was hugging her grandfather now, both of them crying. Father O'Connor had his hands clasped in prayer, his lips moving silently. The courtroom erupted in applause again, louder this time. People were standing. Sarah Chen was clapping so hard her hands hurt. David Kowalski was on his feet, shouting, "God bless you, Judge." But Judge Caprio held up his hand. "I'm not done. Officer Thompson, can you come here, please?" Quote. The bailiff approached, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Yes, Your Honor." Quote. "I want you to get Mr. Mitchell's contact information. I'm going to make some calls. Mr. Mitchell, do you still take the bus to the hospital every day?" Quote. "Yes, Your Honor." "Not anymore. I'm going to arrange for a car service to pick you up every morning and bring you home every evening free of charge. A friend of mine owns a car service, and he'll be honored to help. And I'm going to talk to the hospital administration. That loading zone where you've been parking, we're going to get you a special permit, legal parking right there, every day." Robert was shaking his head in disbelief. "Your Honor, why? Why are you doing all this?" Quote. Judge Caprio's voice was soft but firm. "Because 61 years of love deserves respect. Because your service to this country deserves respect. Because the sacrifice you're making right now, spending every penny, selling your medals, just to make your wife's final days comfortable, that deserves respect. And because, Mr. Mitchell, you remind me why I do this job. You remind me that behind every case number, every citation, every person who stands before this bench, there's a human story. And your story, sir, is one of the most beautiful I've ever heard." Quote. "If you're not crying right now, check your pulse, and if you are, share this video with someone who needs to feel something real today." Robert stood there, this 82-year-old man who'd faced enemy fire, who'd carried wounded soldiers through rice paddies, who'd lost a son to war, who was losing his wife to cancer, and he wept. Not quiet, dignified tears, but deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere profound, somewhere that had been holding everything together for too long. Emma held him, and Father O'Connor put his arms around both of them. The courtroom watched this moment, this raw, real moment of human emotion, and everyone there was changed by it. This wasn't just about parking tickets. This was about what we owe each other. This was about honor and love and sacrifice. This was about seeing people, really seeing them, not just their mistakes or their problems, but their hearts. Judge Caprio waited, giving Robert time to compose himself. When the old man finally looked up, his face red and wet, but somehow lighter, the judge spoke again. "Mr. Mitchell, I have one more question. When you're with Margaret, when you're holding her hand and talking to her, what do you say?" Quote. Robert smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face. "I tell her about our life, Your Honor. I remind her of things. Like the time we went to Cape Cod for our 5th anniversary, and I got so sunburned I couldn't move for 3 days. She had to do everything for me, and she laughed the whole time. Or the time Thomas, our oldest, he was maybe 7, and he decided to cook us breakfast in bed for our anniversary. He burned the toast so bad the smoke alarm went off, and the fire department came. Or when Patrick was born, and I fainted in the delivery room. Big, tough soldier, and I went down like a tree. She never let me forget that." The courtroom laughed, a warm, cathartic sound after so much emotion. "I tell her about Emma's nursing school graduation, how proud we were. I tell her about the garden she planted in our backyard 30 years ago, and how I keep it going for her. I tell her about our neighbor's cat that sits on our porch every morning waiting for her. I tell her about the letters we wrote to each other when I was in Vietnam, and how I still have every single one. I tell her that she's the best thing that ever happened to me. I tell her that if I could go back and live my life again, I wouldn't change a single thing, because every moment led me to her, and every moment with her has been a gift. Make sure you're subscribed, because we need more stories like this in the world, and we bring them to you every single week." I tell her about the day I knew I was going to marry her. We'd only been dating 3 months. We were at Roger Williams Park, sitting by the pond, and she was feeding the ducks. And she laughed at something, I don't even remember what, and the sun was in her hair. And I just knew. I knew she was going to be my whole life. I was 21 years old and I knew, and I was right. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "Mr. Mitchell, that's not a secret, that's a testament. That's what love really looks like. Not the fairy tale, not the romance novel, but the real thing. The staying when it's hard. The sacrificing when it costs you everything. The showing up every single day even when hope is gone. That's love. And you, sir, are teaching everyone in this courtroom, everyone who will see this, what that really means. The judge turned to address the entire courtroom. I want everyone here to understand what they've just witnessed. Mr. Mitchell could have made excuses. He could have just not shown up today, let the tickets go to warrant, dealt with it later. But he didn't. He came here with his granddaughter and his priest, and he stood before this court with dignity and honesty. He told the truth, even when the truth was painful, even when it revealed his struggles, his poverty, his sacrifices. He didn't hide. He didn't make excuses. He stood here as a man of honor. That's the kind of person we should all aspire to be. Officer Thompson handed Judge Caprio a note. The judge read it and smiled. Mr. Mitchell, I just received word that several people in this courtroom want to help. They're offering donations to help with Margaret's care expenses. Quote. Robert immediately shook his head. No, Your Honor, please. I can't take charity. I won't. I appreciate it, I do, but I can't. It's not charity, Mr. Mitchell. It's community. It's people recognizing something beautiful and wanting to be part of it. But I respect your wishes. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to set up a fund in Margaret's name. Any money donated will go to helping other veterans and their families who are facing similar situations. You won't take the money for yourself, but will you let it help others in your honor? In Margaret's honor. Quote, like this video if you think we need to do more to support our veterans and their families. Robert considered this, his military bearing returning. If it helps other people, other families going through this, then yes. Yes, Your Honor. Margaret would like that. She always wanted to help people. She volunteered at the VA hospital for 20 years, visiting veterans who didn't have family. She'd sit with them, read to them, just talk. She understood what they'd been through because she'd watched me go through it. She had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Then, it's settled. The Margaret Mitchell Veterans Family Support Fund. We'll make sure it helps people who need it. Judge Caprio made a note on his pad. Emma spoke up then, her voice still thick with emotion. Your Honor, there's something else you should know. Something my grandfather won't tell you because he's too humble. Robert tried to stop her. Emma, no, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does, Grandpa. It matters. She turned to the judge. When my grandfather sold his medals, he could have gotten much more for them. The collector offered him $6, $800. But my grandfather found out that the collector was planning to resell them for a huge profit. So my grandfather sold them instead to a veterans museum in Connecticut for only $4, $100, because he wanted them to be displayed where other veterans and their families could see them, where they could mean something to other people. He took less money so the medals could do more good. Quote, the courtroom was silent again, absorbing this new information. Judge Caprio sat down heavily in his chair, shaking his head in wonder. Mr. Mitchell, you are an extraordinary man. No, Your Honor, I'm just a man who loves his wife. That's all. That's the only extraordinary thing about me. Share this video if you believe love like this still exists. Judge Caprio looked at his notes, then at Robert. Mr. Mitchell, I need to tell you something. My own wife, Joyce, she passed away 3 years ago. We were married 52 years. And at the end, I did what you're doing. I sat with her every day. I held her hand. I told her our stories. And when she passed, when I had to let her go, the thing that gave me peace was knowing I'd been there. I'd shown up. I'd loved her with everything I had until the very last moment. So I want you to know that what you're doing, this vigil you're keeping, it matters. It matters more than anything. And when the time comes, when you have to say goodbye, you'll have no regrets. You'll know you gave her everything. And that, Mr. Mitchell, is the greatest gift you can give someone you love. The judge's voice broke on the last words, and he had to pause, composing himself. The entire courtroom was crying now. There was no shame in it, no embarrassment. This was a moment of shared humanity, of collective recognition of something profound and true. Robert nodded, unable to speak. Emma had her arms around him, and Father O'Connor's hand was on his shoulder. Judge Caprio cleared his throat. This case is dismissed. All charges are dropped. All fines are waived. Mr. Mitchell, you're free to go. Officer Thompson will give you his contact information and will arrange that transportation and parking permit by tomorrow morning. And Mr. Mitchell, thank you. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for showing us what honor looks like. Thank you for reminding us what love really means. This courtroom, this city, this country, we're better for having people like you in it. Quote. The judge banged his gavel, and the courtroom erupted. People were on their feet, applauding, some openly crying. Sarah Chen rushed forward, pressing a check into Emma's hand. For the fund, she said, for other families. David Kowalski did the same. A woman named Patricia Brennan, there for a traffic violation, came forward with cash. I want to help, she said simply. Drop a comment telling us how this story made you feel, because we want to hear from you. Within minutes, Officer Thompson had collected over $3,000 in donations from the people in the courtroom. Judge Caprio added a check of his own. The Margaret Mitchell Veterans Family Support Fund is officially started, he announced, and I'll personally make sure it continues to grow. Robert was overwhelmed, his face awash with gratitude and disbelief. I don't know what to say. This is too much. Quote, It's not enough, Judge Caprio said firmly. It will never be enough to repay what you and Margaret have given, but it's a start. Emma hugged her grandfather tightly. Grandma's going to be so happy when you tell her about this, Grandpa. She will, Robert agreed, his voice soft. She always believed in the goodness of people. Even when I didn't. When I came back from the war, angry and bitter, she believed. She saw the good in everyone. She saw the good in me when I couldn't see it myself. Quote, Father O'Connor spoke up. Your Honor, may I say something? Quote, Of course, Father. I've been a priest for 38 years. I've married hundreds of couples. I've counseled thousands through troubles in their marriages. And I can tell you, without hesitation, that Robert and Margaret Mitchell have the most extraordinary love I've ever witnessed. It's not perfect love, because no human love is perfect. But it's real love. It's the kind of love that endures, the kind that sacrifices, the kind that, as Scripture says, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Their love has endured poverty and war and grief and loss and illness. And it's still here. It's still strong. That's a miracle in itself. If you believe in miracles, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The courtroom slowly began to empty, but people kept coming up to Robert, shaking his hand, hugging him, thanking him. A young veteran named Marcus Williams, there for a suspended license issue, came forward with tears streaming down his face. Sir, I served in Iraq, 2 tours. And I came home broken. My wife left me. I couldn't keep a job. I was living in my car 6 months ago. But I'd been getting help at the VA, and I'm putting my life back together. And seeing you here today, hearing what you've been through, what you're still going through, it gives me hope. If you can keep going, if you can keep loving, keep fighting, then maybe I can too, quote. Robert gripped the young man's hand. You can, you will, don't give up. Get the help you need. There's no shame in it. I should have gotten help sooner. Don't make my mistakes. And Marcus, thank you for your service. You did your duty. You did what your country asked. Now do your duty to yourself. Take care of yourself. You deserve it. Quote. Marcus nodded, unable to speak, and walked away, wiping his eyes. Another person approached, a middle-aged woman named Linda Torres. Mr. Mitchell, my father was a Vietnam veteran too. He died 5 years ago. He never talked about the war, but I know it haunted him. I just wanted to thank you. For your service, for your sacrifice, for being the kind of man who keeps going even when it's hard. My father was like that too. You remind me of him. Robert took her hand gently. What was your father's name? Quote, Antonio Torres. He was in the Marines, Da Nang area, 1967 to 1968. Robert's eyes widened. Antonio Torres? From the Bronx? Had a tattoo of a rose on his left forearm? Quote. Linda gasped. Yes, did you know him? Quote, Know him? We served together. He saved my life during an ambush in February of '68. Pulled me into a foxhole when mortar rounds started coming in. Tony Torres. My God, I haven't thought about him in years. How? How did he die? Quote, heart attack. He was only 68. Comment below if you believe these connections are meant to be. Robert's face fell. I'm so sorry. He was a good man, a brave man. Please know that. Whatever demons he fought, whatever he struggled with, he was a hero. He saved my life. I gotta come home to Margaret because of him. I gotta see my children grow up because of him. I got 61 years with the love of my life because Tony Torres pulled me into that foxhole. Please know that. Please remember that. Linda was crying now. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. He never talked about it. I never knew. That's how it was for a lot of us. We didn't talk about it because we didn't know how, but your father was a hero. Don't ever doubt that. Linda hugged Robert, this stranger who had known her father in ways she never would, and Robert held her, both of them crying for Tony Torres, for all the veterans who came home broken, for all the families who never fully understood what their loved ones had endured. Judge Caprio watched these interactions from his bench, making no move to rush anyone. This was why he did this job. Not for the parking tickets or the small claims or the civil disputes. For these moments. For these connections. For the chance to see humanity at its finest. Finally, the courtroom was empty except for Robert, Emma, Father O'Connor, Judge Caprio, and Officer Thompson. The judge came down from his bench again and approached Robert. Mr. Mitchell, may I give you my personal phone number? I'd like to hear how Margaret is doing, and I'd like to visit her, if you'd allow it. Quote, Robert was taken aback. Your Honor, you don't need to do that. I know I don't need to. I want to. My wife Joyce, at the end. People visited her. Friends, family, even some people from the courthouse. And every visit mattered. Every person who came and held her hand and told her they loved her, it mattered. I could see it on her face, even when she couldn't respond. So, if you'll allow it, I'd like to visit Margaret. Share this video with someone who understands the power of showing up. Robert nodded, his eyes filling again. She'd like that. She always watched your show on YouTube. She thought you were the kindest judge she'd ever seen. She'd be honored. Then I'll come tomorrow. What time do you usually arrive at the hospital? Quote, 8 in the morning. I'll be there at 8. We can go in together. And Judge Caprio was. The next morning, November 15th, 2023, at exactly 8 a.m., Judge Frank Caprio walked into the ICU at Rhode Island Hospital with Robert Mitchell. Margaret Mitchell lay in bed in room 4287, unconscious, her breathing assisted by a ventilator. Her gray hair was thin and wispy on the pillow. Her skin was translucent, showing every vein. But on her left hand, on her ring finger, was a simple gold band that had been there for 61 years. Robert took his usual chair beside her bed and picked up her hand gently. Good morning, my darling. I have someone special here to meet you. This is Judge Caprio. I told you about him, remember? About what happened yesterday in the courtroom. He came to see you. He wanted to meet the woman I've been telling him about. Judge Caprio stood on the other side of the bed, looking down at this woman he'd never met but felt like he knew. Mrs. Mitchell, it's an honor to meet you. Your husband has told me about your love story, and I have to say, you picked a good man. The best. He loves you more than anything in this world. You're a lucky woman. But he's lucky too, because the way he talks about you, the way he lights up when he says your name, that tells me you loved him just as much. That's rare. That's precious. Hold on to that, wherever you are right now. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now, because this story isn't over. As Judge Caprio spoke, something remarkable happened. Margaret's fingers twitched. Robert felt it immediately. Maggie? Maggie? Sweetheart, did you hear that? Can you hear us? Quote. Her fingers moved again, a definite squeeze around Robert's hand. The heart monitor's beeping accelerated slightly. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Robert looked up at Judge Caprio, his face transformed with hope. She hears us. She knows we're here. Judge Caprio felt his throat tighten. Talk to her. Tell her. Tell her your story. Tell her everything. And Robert did. He sat there holding his wife's hand with Judge Caprio standing witness, and he told her their story. He started with the day they met at a church social in 1961. He told her about their first date, how nervous he was, how he'd practiced what he was going to say for a week. He told her about the day he asked her father's permission to marry her, how terrified he'd been. He told her about their wedding day, how beautiful she was walking down that aisle. He told her about their wedding night, how awkward and sweet and perfect it was. He told her about waving goodbye when he left for Vietnam, how she stood on that platform crying but trying to be brave for him. He told her about reading her letters in the jungle, how they kept him alive, gave him something to fight for. He told her about coming home, damaged and different, and how she loved him anyway. He told her about the birth of each of their children, how she was so strong, so brave. He told her about Patrick, about losing him, about how they held each other through that grief and somehow survived it. He told her about growing old together, about retirement, about their grandchildren, about their life. He talked for 2 hours straight, and Judge Caprio stood there the entire time, listening, learning what love really meant. When Robert finally paused, exhausted, Judge Caprio spoke softly. "Mrs. Mitchell, your husband is going to be okay. He's not alone. People are helping him. The hospital's taking care of him. He's eating better. He's getting rides so he doesn't hurt his knees. He's going to be fine. So you don't have to worry about him. You can rest. You can let go if you need to. He'll be okay. He'll miss you every day for the rest of his life, but he'll be okay. Because you loved him well. You taught him how to keep going. And he'll keep going, because that's what you'd want. Like this video if you believe love never really ends." Margaret's fingers squeezed Robert's hand again, and this time, her eyes opened. Just for a moment. Just a flutter. But she looked at Robert, and there was recognition there. There was love. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out because of the ventilator. Robert leaned close, his face inches from hers. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I love you too. I've always loved you. I'll always love you. It's okay. You can rest now. I'll be fine. Emma will take care of me. Thomas and Sarah are coming tomorrow. We'll all be together. It's okay." A single tear rolled down Margaret's cheek, and then her eyes closed again. Her hand relaxed in Robert's, but her heart monitor remained steady. She was still here. Still fighting. Judge Caprio quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Outside in the hallway, he found Emma in her nurse's scrubs, just arriving for her shift. "Your grandmother opened her eyes," he told her. She heard him. She squeezed his hand. She's still there. Emma covered her mouth, tears streaming. "She is? Really?" Quote, "Really? Your grandfather, Emma, he's the most remarkable man I've ever met. And your grandmother must be pretty remarkable too, to inspire that kind of love." "She is, Your Honor. She really is. She's the strongest person I know. When my dad died, when Patrick died, she's the one who held us all together. She planned the funeral. She comforted everyone. And it was only later, weeks later, that I found her in the garden crying. She'd held it in, stayed strong for all of us, and only let herself break down when she was alone. That's who she is. Drop a comment telling us about the strongest person you know." Judge Caprio spent another hour at the hospital, meeting the nurses who took care of Margaret, talking to Dr. Chen about her condition, and making arrangements for the parking permit and transportation service. He also quietly paid off Robert's outstanding debt to the hospital cafeteria, where Robert had been buying his meals. The cashier, a woman named Dolores Rodriguez, had told the judge that Robert always said please and thank you, always left his tray clean, always treated everyone with respect. "He's a gentleman," Dolores said. "Old school. You don't see that much anymore." Over the next 10 days, something beautiful happened. The Margaret Mitchell Veterans Family Support Fund grew. Judge Caprio mentioned it on his television show, and donations poured in. Within a week, it had $47,000. Within 2 weeks, $93,000. People from all over the country sent money, sent letters, sent their own stories of veteran families struggling. The fund was established as a permanent charity, managed by the Providence VA, with oversight from Judge Caprio's court. But more than that, people visited, Marcus Williams, the young veteran from the courtroom, came to visit Robert at the hospital. They sat together in the cafeteria, two veterans from different wars, talking about things only they could understand. Sarah Chen, the woman from the courtroom, came with her grandmother, who was a Korean War veteran's widow. They sat with Robert and Margaret, four strangers connected by shared experience. David Kowalski, the retired teacher, came and read poetry to Margaret, beautiful verses about love and life and memory. If you believe in the power of community, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Father O'Connor came every day, praying with Robert, giving him communion, sitting in silence when words weren't enough. Emma was there whenever she wasn't working, bringing her grandfather real food, making sure he ate, forcing him to take breaks and rest. And Judge Caprio came every morning. He'd arrive at the hospital at 8 a.m., spend an hour with Robert and Margaret, talk to her even though she rarely opened her eyes anymore, and then go to his courthouse. He told his staff that it was the most important part of his day. On November 24, 2023, 10 days after the courtroom hearing, Margaret's condition worsened. Dr. Chen called the family in. Thomas flew in from Seattle. Sarah flew in from Boston. They all gathered in room 4287, surrounding Margaret's bed. Robert held her left hand. Emma held her right. Thomas and Sarah stood at the foot of the bed. Father O'Connor stood by Robert's side. And Judge Caprio, who'd become part of this family through shared grief and witnessed love, stood by the door. Margaret was conscious now, but barely. The ventilator had been removed at her request, expressed through hand signals days before. She was breathing on her own, labored and shallow, but it was her breath. Her voice was a whisper, each word an effort. "Robert," she breathed. "I'm here, Maggie. I'm right here." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. 61 years. Best 61 years of my life. Not enough time. No, my darling, it's never enough time. I could have 1,000 years with you and it wouldn't be enough. Share this video if you believe love like this is worth fighting for. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Each word was a struggle, but she forced them out. Best husband, best father, best man. You made me the man I am, Maggie. You. It was always you. Promise me. She paused, gathering strength. Promise me you'll live. Not just exist. Live. Laugh. See your grandchildren grow up. Don't stop living because I stopped. Maggie, I don't know how to do this without you. Yes, you do. I taught you. 61 years I taught you. You're strong. You're brave. You're good. You'll be okay. She looked at Emma, at Thomas, at Sarah. Take care of your grandfather. He's stubborn. Make sure he eats. Make sure he doesn't isolate himself. They all promised through their tears. Margaret looked past her family, her fading eyes finding Judge Caprio by the door. Judge. He stepped forward. I'm here, Mrs. Mitchell. Thank you for seeing him, for seeing us, for reminding the world that love matters. Mrs. Mitchell, you and your husband have taught me more about love in 10 days than I learned in 77 years. Thank you. She smiled, just barely. Frank? Judge Caprio was startled. She'd used his first name. Yes? Quote, You're Joyce. She's waiting for you. She's proud of you. I can feel it. She loves you still. The judge's eyes filled with tears. How did you? I'm close to that place now. I can feel things. She's there, Frank. She's waiting. You'll see her again. And when you do, it'll be like no time has passed at all. That's what I feel. That's what I know. Quote, If you're crying right now, you're not alone. And don't forget to like this video. Margaret turned back to Robert. Dance with me. What? Robert was confused. Our song, In Your Head. Dance with me one more time. Robert understood. He stood, wincing at the pain in his knees, and carefully, so carefully, he leaned over the bed and put his arms around his wife. He hummed their song, Unchained Melody, the Righteous Brothers version they'd danced to at their wedding 61 years ago. He swayed gently, moving her slightly in his arms, dancing with her one last time in a hospital bed while their family watched and cried. When the song ended, when Robert's humming faded away, Margaret whispered one last time, I love you. Always. Forever. In this life and the next. I love you too, Maggie. More than words can say, more than time can measure. You're my whole heart. Margaret closed her eyes then, a small smile on her face, and her breathing changed, slower, shallower. The heart monitor's rhythm began to slow. They all gathered closer, hands on her, surrounding her with love. Father O'Connor began to pray, the last rites, his voice soft and comforting. And at 2:47 p.m. on November 24, 2023, Margaret Ann Mitchell, aged 80 years old, passed away peacefully, surrounded by everyone who loved her, holding the hand of the man she'd loved for 61 years. The heart monitor's steady beep became a single, continuous tone. Dr. Chen, who'd been standing respectfully at the back of the room, came forward and checked for vital signs. She looked at the family, her eyes full of compassion. "I'm so sorry for your loss. She's at peace now." Robert sat back down, still holding Margaret's hand. He didn't cry, he didn't speak. He just sat there holding her hand, his thumb stroking her fingers the way he had every day for 9 months, for 61 years, for a lifetime. Comment below with your favorite memory of someone you've lost. Everyone gave him time. They stood there, crying quietly, but they gave him time to be with her. 10 minutes passed. 20. Finally, Robert leaned forward and kissed Margaret's forehead. "Sleep well, my darling. Dream beautiful dreams. I'll see you again someday. Save me a dance." He stood then, his legs unsteady, and Emma and Thomas caught him, held him up. "She's gone," he said, and it was only then that he cried. Deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. His children held him, and they cried together, the three of them, mourning the woman who'd been the center of their universe. Judge Caprio approached Father O'Connor. "Father, please let me know about the funeral arrangements. I'd like to attend." "Of course, Your Honor, and thank you. For everything. For seeing them, for helping them, for being here." The funeral was held on November 28, 2023, at St. Augustine's Catholic Church. Over 300 people attended. Veterans in uniform, nurses from Rhode Island Hospital, people from the courtroom that day, strangers who'd heard the story and wanted to pay their respects. The church was filled to capacity, with people standing in the aisles and outside on the steps. Judge Caprio gave one of the eulogies. He spoke about love, about sacrifice, about the beauty of a life lived in devotion to another person. He spoke about Robert's selflessness, Margaret's strength, their unbreakable bond. He spoke about what they taught him, taught everyone who heard their story, about what really matters in life. Margaret and Robert Mitchell showed us that love isn't a feeling, Judge Caprio said from the pulpit, his voice carrying through the crowded church. It's a choice. It's a commitment. It's showing up every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. It's selling your medals, because your wife's comfort matters more than your pride. It's loving someone when they're young and beautiful, and when they're old and sick. It's being there for the first dance and the last dance, and every dance in between. That's what they showed us. That's their gift to us. Make sure you're subscribed, because stories like this need to be told and remembered. Robert sat in the front pew, flanked by his children and grandchildren. He wore his dress uniform from his service days, carefully preserved, the ribbons where his medals had once been now empty, except for that one bronze star. On his lap, he held Margaret's Bible, the one she'd carried every Sunday for 60 years, worn and marked and filled with her notes. At the cemetery, as they lowered Margaret's casket into the ground, Robert stood at attention, saluting her, the old soldier giving his final respect to his general, his commander, the woman who'd led him through life with grace and love. Tears ran down his face, but his hand was steady, his salute perfect. After the burial, people came to Robert with stories about Margaret, how she'd helped them, encouraged them, loved them. A woman named Rita Martinez told how Margaret had sat with her in the hospital when Rita's husband died, how she'd held her hand through the worst night of her life, how she'd checked on her every week for 2 years after. A man named Joseph Chen told how Margaret had helped his family when they immigrated from Taiwan, how she'd taught his mother English, how she'd made them feel welcome in a strange country. On and on, the stories came, painting a picture of a woman who'd lived her life in service to others, who'd loved not just her family but her entire community. Robert listened to each story, thanked each person, and collected their memories like treasures. "She'd be so happy to know she mattered," he said over and over. That's all she ever wanted, to matter, to make a difference. The weeks after Margaret's death were hard. Robert returned to their apartment in Cranston, and it was empty in ways it had never been before. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her coffee cup still sat by the sink. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand. Everywhere he looked, she was there and not there. Share this if you know someone who's grieving and needs to know they're not alone. Emma moved in with him for the first month, sleeping in her old childhood room, making sure he ate, making sure he didn't sink into despair. Judge Caprio called every few days, checking on him, inviting him to lunch, making sure he knew he wasn't alone. Father O'Connor visited twice a week, praying with him, reminiscing about Margaret, helping him process his grief. But it was Marcus Williams, the young veteran from the courtroom, who helped Robert the most. Marcus started coming by every Saturday. He'd bring groceries, and they'd cook together. They'd watch football. They'd work in Margaret's garden, which Robert was determined to keep alive. And they'd talk. They'd talk about war, about loss, about what it meant to keep going when everything hurt. "Mr. Mitchell," Marcus said one Saturday in January, "how do you do it? How do you get up every morning when she's not here?" Quote. Robert thought about it, standing in the winter garden, looking at the dormant plants that would bloom again in spring. "I made her a promise, Marcus. I promised her I'd live, not just exist. And Margaret, she always knew when I was breaking a promise. Even now, I feel like she'd know. So I get up, I shower, I eat breakfast, I do the crossword puzzle because we used to do it together and it makes me feel close to her. I go to the store, I go to church, I visit the cemetery and tell her about my week. I babysit Emma's kids, my great-grandchildren. I live. Because she asked me to. Because she loved me enough to worry about what would happen to me after she was gone. That's love, Marcus. Even in death, she's still taking care of me." If this story has touched you, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. In February 2024, 3 months after Margaret's death, Judge Caprio invited Robert to the courthouse. When Robert arrived, confused about why he'd been summoned, he found the courtroom packed again. But this time, it wasn't for a hearing. It was for a ceremony. "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Caprio announced from the bench, "the Margaret Mitchell Veterans Family Support Fund has now raised over $240,000. Because of you, because of your story, because of the love you and Margaret shared, dozens of veteran families have been helped. Medical bills have been paid. Rent has been covered. Food has been provided. Transportation has been arranged. You did that. You and Margaret. Your love has had a ripple effect that's touched hundreds of lives." Robert stood there, overwhelmed, as Judge Caprio continued. "But that's not why I asked you here today. Mr. Mitchell, when you sold your medals, you did so because you loved your wife more than you loved your own honors. But those medals represented real heroism, real sacrifice. So today, with the help of the U.S. Army and the Veterans Administration, we're presenting you with replacement medals. Every single one you earned. Every single one you sacrificed." 2 Army officers in dress uniform came forward, carrying a display case. Inside were all of Robert's medals, including a new Bronze Star and a new Purple Heart. There was also something else. Another medal Robert had never received. "Mr. Mitchell," the senior officer, Colonel Patricia Hayes, said, "the Army has reviewed your service record. Your actions on March 23, 1969, outside Da Nang, when you rescued Lieutenant James Morrison under heavy enemy fire, was originally recommended for the Silver Star. However, due to administrative issues, it was downgraded to a Bronze Star. Today, we're correcting that error. On behalf of the United States Army and a grateful nation, we're presenting you with the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Comment right now with your favorite moment from this story." The courtroom erupted in applause. People were on their feet, cheering. Robert stood there, tears streaming down his face, staring at the medals. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "You absolutely deserve this," Colonel Hayes said firmly. "You've always deserved this. Your nation honors you, sir." Robert accepted the medal case with shaking hands. He looked at the medals through his tears, and then he did something that surprised everyone. He carefully removed the silver star from the case and pinned it to his cardigan, right next to the bronze star Margaret had made him promise to wear. "One from her," he said softly. "One from today, together, the way we always were." Judge Caprio wiped his eyes. "Mr. Mitchell, there's one more thing. The city of Providence is naming the park across from the hospital Margaret Mitchell Veterans Memorial Garden. We're installing benches, planting her favorite flowers, creating a place where veterans and their families can sit and rest and remember. There will be a plaque telling yours and Margaret's story. Your love will live on, helping others, giving them hope." Robert couldn't speak. He just nodded, clutching the medal case to his chest. After the ceremony, as people gathered around Robert, congratulating him, thanking him, Judge Caprio pulled him aside. "Robert, may I ask you something personal?" Quote, "Of course, Your Honor. Do you have any regrets, anything you wish you'd done differently?" Quote, Robert thought about it for a long moment. "Just one. I wish I'd told her more often how much she meant to me. I did tell her, especially at the end, but I wish I'd said it more. Every single day. Multiple times a day. You can never say, 'I love you,' too much. That's what I'd tell young couples if they asked me. Don't assume they know. Say it. Show it. Every day. Because someday, there won't be any more days. There won't be any more chances. And you'll wish you'd said it one more time." "If you've learned something from this story, please share it so others can learn too," Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "That's good advice. Wise advice. It's advice I learned too late, but maybe someone else can learn it in time." 6 months after Margaret's death, in May 2024, Robert's health began to decline. His heart, the doctor said, was failing. Broken heart syndrome. Dr. Patel at the VA hospital told Emma privately, "It's a real medical condition. The stress of grief can literally damage the heart. Your grandfather's heart was already weak, and losing your grandmother. I'm sorry, Emma. We'll make him comfortable, but you should prepare yourself." Emma told her grandfather what the doctor said. They were sitting in Margaret's garden, now in full bloom, exactly as she would have wanted it. Robert took the news calmly. "I'm not afraid, Emma. I'm ready. I've lived a good life. I've loved and been loved. I've raised children, buried a son, held grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I've served my country. I've kept my promise to Margaret. I've lived these past 6 months, really lived, the way I promised her I would. But I'm tired now. And I miss her. I miss her so much, it's like part of me is missing. So if it's time to go, if it's time to be with her again, then I'm ready. She'd be so proud of you, Grandpa." "I hope so. That's all I ever wanted. To make her proud, to be worthy of her love." Before you finish this video, make sure you're subscribed, because stories like Robert and Margaret's need to be remembered. Robert spent his final weeks visiting people. He went to see Marcus Williams, who was now working steadily and had reconciled with his ex-wife. They were trying again, working on their marriage, going to counseling. "You did that, Mr. Mitchell," Marcus said. "Seeing your love, hearing your story, it made me want to fight for my marriage, made me believe it was worth fighting for." Robert visited the Margaret Mitchell Veterans Memorial Garden, sitting on a bench surrounded by roses and daisies, Margaret's favorites. He read the plaque that told their story, and he smiled. "You're famous now, Maggie," he whispered. "Everyone knows about our love. Everyone knows how special you were." He visited the families who'd been helped by the fund, meeting veterans and their wives, husbands, children. He listened to their stories, offered advice when asked, mostly just listened. "You matter," he told each one. "Your service matters. Your sacrifice matters. Don't ever think it doesn't." And he spent time with Judge Caprio, the two old men having become genuine friends. They'd have lunch at a small Italian restaurant on Federal Hill, sharing stories about their wives, about their lives, about what they'd learned. "Frank," Robert said one day in late June, "I want to thank you." "For what?" Quote, "For seeing me, for seeing us, for caring about an old veteran and his parking tickets. You didn't have to do any of what you did. You could have just dismissed the tickets and moved on. But you didn't. You made our story matter. You helped Margaret's last days mean something. You've helped so many people through that fund. You gave our love a legacy. Judge Caprio's eyes were wet. Robert, you gave me a gift too. You reminded me why I do this job. You showed me what real love looks like. You inspired me. You inspired thousands of people. Your story has been viewed by millions online. People write to me from all over the world, telling me how your story changed them, made them appreciate their own marriages, made them call their parents, made them reach out to veterans in their communities. You did that. You and Margaret. Drop one final comment telling us what you'll take away from Robert and Margaret's story. On July 3, 2024, Robert James Mitchell passed away peacefully in his sleep at home. He was 83 years old. Emma found him in the morning lying in bed, his hand reaching out toward the empty pillow next to him where Margaret had slept for 61 years. On his chest was Margaret's Bible. On his face was a smile. The funeral was even larger than Margaret's had been. Veterans from 3 wars came to honor him. Judge Caprio gave another eulogy talking about heroism, about the heroism of war, but also the heroism of love, of commitment, of living each day with honor. Robert Mitchell was a hero 3 times, Judge Caprio said. Once in Vietnam when he risked his life to save his lieutenant. Once when he sold everything, including his medals, to give his dying wife comfort. And once when he kept his promise to her, when he chose to live fully even though his heart was broken, when he used his grief to help others. 3 times a hero. But if you asked him, he'd say he was just a man who loved his wife. And maybe that's what heroism really is, loving someone more than you love yourself. Giving everything you have for someone else's good. Living with honor, even when no one's watching. Robert was buried next to Margaret in Swan Point Cemetery. On the single headstone they shared, the inscription read, Robert James Mitchell, 1941 to 2024, and Margaret Ann Mitchell, 1943 to 2023. Together for 61 years, together forever, we danced. Quote, at the burial, something remarkable happened. As the honor guard fired their salute, as the flag was folded and presented to Emma, dozens of butterflies appeared from nowhere, landing on the flowers surrounding the grave. People gasped, pointed, smiled through their tears. It's them, someone whispered. It's Robert and Margaret. Whether you believe in such signs or not, everyone there felt something, a sense of peace, a sense of rightness. A sense that 2 souls who'd been separated for 7 months were finally together again, dancing to their song, young and whole, and eternally in love. Thank you for watching this incredible, true story of love, sacrifice, and justice. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel and share this video with everyone you know. Leave a comment telling us about the love stories in your life, about the veterans you know, about how this story changed you. And remember, love is a choice you make every single day. Choose it, fight for it, cherish it. Because someday, like Robert and Margaret, your love story will be your legacy. Make it count. Next time, we'll be bringing you another incredible courtroom moment that proves justice and compassion can coexist. You won't want to miss it. Until then, love each other well.